Good evening and welcome to the channel's studios here in London with your international news around the world in 5. US President Joe Biden has said civilians who are packed into Rafah in the Gaza Strip are exposed and vulnerable and must be protected.
Many people there have been displaced multiple times, fleeing the violence to the north, and now they're packed into Rafah.
Israel must make credible efforts to protect the more than 1 million Palestinians sheltering in the southern Gazan city, he said. Rafah has come under heavy Israeli airstrikes in recent days, with a number of casualties reported. Doctors say people living in the city were living in fear. The UK Foreign Secretary, Sir David Cameron, says he's very concerned about the situation in Rafah.
It really, we think, is impossible to see how you can fight a war amongst these people. There's nowhere for them to go. They can't go south into Egypt. They can't go north and back to their homes because many have been destroyed. So we are very concerned about the situation, and we want Israel to stop and think very seriously before it takes any further action.
The US Senate has passed a $95 billion aid package for Ukraine, Israel and Taiwan after months of wrangling, but it faces opposition from the House of Representatives. The foreign aid bill passed by 70 to 29. While Democrats were in favor of passing the bill, Republicans were divided and previously voted it down. The package includes $60 billion for Kyiv, $14 billion for Israel's war against Hamas, and $10 billion for humanitarian aid in conflict zones, including in Gaza. Ukraine's president said he was grateful to senators for passing it. The majority leader of the Senate described it as one of the most historic bills ever to pass.
It's certainly been years, perhaps decades, since the Senate passed a bill that so greatly impacts not just our national security, not just the security of our allies, but the security of Western democracy.
The ex-US President Donald Trump has asked the Supreme Court to suspend a lower court ruling that he does not have presidential immunity from prosecution. He had claimed in his election interference case he could not be tried for acts carried out as president. 3 lower court judges disagreed, ruling that he can be prosecuted like any other citizen, but Mr. Trump's lawyers said he should not be tried during an election campaign. Police in northern India have fired tear gas to prevent thousands of protesting farmers demanding minimum crop prices from marching on Delhi. The capital is ringed by razor wire, cement blocks and fencing on 3 sides to keep protests at bay. The government fears a repeat of 2020, where dozens died in a year-long protest that ended only after ministers agreed to repeal controversial agricultural laws. But just over 2 years later, farmers say other demands have not been met. India's farmers form an influential voting bloc, and analysts say the government of Prime Minister Narendra Modi will be keen not to alienate them. His BJP is seeking a 3rd consecutive term in power in general elections this year. Footage shows a huge fire engulfing a newly built water park in Gothenburg in Sweden. 12 people were sent to hospital for minor injuries, and police say 1 person is missing. Officers evacuated a hotel and nearby offices, warning residents to stay inside because of the smoke. The cause is still unknown. The water park, which was due to open later this year, was part of an expansion of Leisburg Amusement Park. Senegalese lobby groups have called for peaceful protests across the country against the postponement of this month's presidential election. South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa has ordered the deployment of 2,900 soldiers to aid in the fight against armed rebel groups in the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo. The troops will be posted as part of the Southern African Mission in Democratic Republic of Congo, which was approved by the regional bloc in May last year. Malawi and Tanzania will also contribute troops to the mission. And thousands of drivers for ride-sharing platforms Uber, Lyft and food delivery drivers are expected to go on strike across the United States and the UK on Valentine's Day for fair pay.
Delivering with Uber lets you make money on your own schedule.
The drivers, considered independent contractors, have accused the platforms of taking disproportionately high amounts as commissions. In 2023, Uber drivers' monthly average gross earnings fell 17.1%. In the UK, Deliveroo said its riders always earn at least the national living wage. And that's your international news around the world in 5. Now back to the channel's studios in Lagos.